Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week we've seen dinner dates between superheroes, a supernatural soul stealing mansion, and a hard nosed, hard boiled detective taking on the mob. But we're going to kick things off this week here with Detective Comics 1084, written by Ram V with artwork by Javier Fernandez. So in this issue, we kind of see the culmination of everything that we've been building to, with Batman being taken over by the Asmere and him kind of having to take this otherworldly venture to try to get back to where he needed to be. So Bruce as Batman has finally actually returned to Gotham. He spent a little bit of time with Talia. There was some machinations that went on that's led Talia to basically have to keep a promise that Bruce didn't necessarily agree with. But it's kind of setting up some interesting things, especially considering that Batman is going to be taking on the Orgum family. And one of the promises kept was to one of the Orgum family members. The other thing that happens in this issue is that a new player kind of enters the end game here, and it should make for a very interesting proposition to happen at the very end of what Brom has been building throughout the entirety of this. If you know Batman, you know that things usually end with a particular character here, but with Ram V behind the reins of it, I can see this being a really interesting end cap for everything that he's built. This so far has been quite the evergreen story. I can see coming back to this over and over and over. It's not something that's been bogged down with the minutia of continuity that we see in the other Batman book, or just historical things. Rom pulls from what he needs to, but this is something that you don't have to be connected into the other, things that are happening in the DC universe proper right now. This is something you could dive into, and it seems like it's something you're going to be able to dive in more and more over the years and really take enjoyment from it. The layouts were expertly done in this book. So Javier Fernandez, I don't believe he's done any artwork on the series with Rom previously, but I was really pleased to see what he had done in this issue. The action was frenetic. It was well plotted. It definitely kept your eyes on the page here. But when working in conversational aspects of the issue, it takes advantage of that, and it really takes those parts of the issue and slows it down and really kind of plots out the panel work, and it's done really in a really great way, using the traditional 4 to 6 panel layouts, especially repeating motifs here that you see visually. It does a really nice job page to page kind of laying those out, and you can kind of see those repeating echoes. The other thing is that Rom, being that this is definitely an operatic take on Batman, uses those same motifs narratively and through his dialogue. You kind of see repeated phrases over and over, and you kind of see things that are said by Bruce as Batman, repeated through his own train of thought and through things that he's actually saying, and kind of maybe trying to repeat it, kind of like will it into existence. So we kind of hear these phrases over and over and over, and it really kind of drives home the what he's trying to say and what Ram is trying to say as a writer on this. I think it was really an expertly done issue. It's really building up towards the end of it. I loved this through and through, but I'm more curious, what did you think if you picked this up? All right, next up, we're going to talk about Blade, issue 10, the final issue of this series, written by Brian Edward Hill with artwork by Elena Casagrande. So, this is the culmination of everything we've been building to. Blade has upgraded his power set. He's kind of, made these connections with individuals along the way that he knows he's going to need in order to take down the Adana from world domination, kind of taking over civilization through the negative emotions and supernatural machinations. So they finally get their troop together here. They got the upgraded power sets, and it's time to take the battle right to them. As we left off in the previous issue, Blade was kind of trying to coax the Adana out of hiding, right? And in order to do that, he had destroyed a lot of supernatural artifacts, and everyone in the supernatural part of the Marvel universe who's out to get him, basically. So as Blade's trying to hold his own, he's really hoping and, trying to make sure that the Adana can finally take the fight to him, which ultimately it does. So Casagrande really gets to stretch some of her muscles in drawing these action scenes. It's well plotted. It's drawn beautifully. You feel the kinetic energy as Blade swings his sword, and when kicks are striking in the faces. It's really it really allows her to draw some really fun scenes. That's speaking towards the character work, though. The thing that really kind of lets this issue down for me just a bit is that the backgrounds are very sparse. It is a very Spartan approach on how this issue was drawn, and it kind of leaves everything feeling, I don't know, a little lackluster, a little missing. It's fun and it's definitely dynamic, but I wish there could have been a little bit more time and attention placed on the artwork in this, specifically the backgrounds, or just something to draw us in besides the character work itself. I can understand that the landscapes were a little sparse to begin with due to the nature of where they were fighting, but it needed something more to draw me in. Along those same lines, this issue feels like it should not have been a final issue. It feels like Brian Edward Hill had more to say on this, but it was maybe a mandate by Marvel, or maybe he had other commitments where it said, okay, we got to wrap this book up. 10 issues is what we got. So we're finishing it. And it was sad. It's hard to say it was satisfying. I wanted to say it, but you know what? I can't lie. It was a little lackluster. It wraps up. You get an ending, but I didn't want it to end, and I definitely didn't want it to end in the fashion that it did right now. Now, I do know that Brian Edward Hill is going to be working with Blade again in the future with a Midnight Suns book. I don't know if the nature of that's going to be a mini series, a potential new ongoing, or strictly just a tie into the Blood Hunt event. I'll definitely be checking it out because this series has, as a whole, has been satisfying as opposed to this final issue. So I would really love for future books by Brian Edward Hill taking on Blade again. He has more to say. You can definitely tell that. So with that being said, did you pick this up? Okay, let's talk about Daredevil number 8, written by Saladin Ahmed with artwork by Aaron Cooder on the main story. So this was billed as a milestone issue. It was a $9.99 book, and there are backup issues here with other artists and writers on it, but we're going to primarily focus on the main story because that's what builds off each and every issue. So at the end of issue number 7, Matt had been reunited with Elektra, who I don't believe that they had seen each other since maybe the first and second issues of this new series. And it's been nice. I've been waiting for them to start working towards their relationship as, as superheroes, basically, as the two dueling daredevils. So they get to take the fight to the Heat, the new organization that Daredevil's been fighting, that's really been kind of the background player in all of the things that have been happening with Matt in his life. And it definitely plays a part into what's been happening on the supernatural aspect as well. So as they go and take the fights to the Heat, you can see that there's a familiar foe that comes into the fold that is acting a little bit out of nature to what he had normally been previously. So Cooter has been drawing excellent scenes on this. I said it in my last review of the series here, and I'll say it again. When he is on the book, when he is writing every single one of these panels and pages, the book is just so much better for it. He definitely is working well with Ahmed. I feel like they have a good teamwork going for them. And when there's other fill-in artists, which unfortunately there has already been, even with only 8 issues, the book just isn't what it could be. Now, we see little hints and little notions that this is going to be building off of what we've seen in other issues as well, with the nature of these demons taking over people that have been in Matt's life. When I say that this familiar foe is definitely not acting the way that he had normally been conveyed, I truly do believe that there's enough hints in this issue that show it's not really him. He's under the influence of a demon. Now, which demon that is, yet to be revealed, but it leaves something for future issues here, and I'm excited to see what they do with that. Um, let's talk about that price tag though. This being a $9.99 issue, it was just Marvel playing Marvel games. And I hate to say that, but it really was. There's no reason for this to be a $9.99 issue. We do have a true milestone issue just coming down the pipeline. And while I do appreciate the stories that were done by Ann Nesenti and D.G. Chichester, they did harken back to the time when they were on the book, and they were satisfying stories. But it was unnecessary. It was unneeded. Those stories could have been told in any other true milestone issue. And the fact that this was 9.99, it just was absolutely 100% unnecessary and unneeded. And I hate the fact that this weighs this issue down, but the honest to God truth is that it does, and it's hard not to discuss that when you're talking about the entire scope of this issue, because the story that Saladin Ahmed and Aaron Cooter do could have played out a heck of a lot longer if this was just a normal issue. So it's a tough grade. It's a tough thing for me to say because I love Daredevil, but it's just the honest to God truth in my opinion here. So am I wrong? Am I misreading something on here? If you read Daredevil, let me know. Next up from Marvel, we have Gods Issue 7, written by Jonathan Hickman with artwork by Valerio Schiti. So this is kind of like a standalone issue. We start to learn a lot about Dimitri, the envoy of the natural order of things. It really kind of dives deep into his childhood and his background and maybe some of the reasons why he became the envoy of the natural order of things. So he comes from Russian parentage, and his parents were actually part of the space race. They were cosmonauts that were sent into space who then also mysteriously disappeared. And this is something that's haunted him throughout his entire life. And you can tell part of the things that he's been going through, that we kind of, it's an untold thing, is that he's been working his way towards finding them and finding the truth of what happened to them as the Russian government covered it up and kind of washed their hands of everything. This was a satisfying story. Um, with the nature of it being the penultimate issue of this series, though, it felt really bizarre. I loved the fact that we got to spend time with one of these main players in the book and really dive into the character, the nature of his character, and kind of find out, what makes him tick. That part of it was outstanding. When it comes into what the heck the meaning of this book is, though, I couldn't find it. I didn't really know where this was making the connections that we needed to see. Um, I don't know. It's a hard one. I'm looking for what the purpose of this book is, and I know it's there. We've seen bits and pieces, and you can tell that maybe the scope of this book needed maybe not 8 issues. I mean, this feels like it should have been 25 to 30 issues at the very least to really spell everything out, because there's other characters in this book here that we've been introduced to that I still don't know as much as I know about, like Dimitri in this issue. So it needed time to breathe, it needed time to grow. Those are the negatives here. Let's focus on the positives, though, because there are quite a few. Again, the standalone nature of this issue was absolutely satisfying. I loved knowing about Dimitri, and the way that Sheedy draws this issue is just, well, it's the same as they've drawn every single previous issue, which is just blockbuster, gorgeous artwork. Um, there's things that happen in this book that's like where the use of color is really drawn forward. There's things that happen early in Dimitri's childhood that are really just, they pop because of the significance with the color. The red motif, especially with the notion that they are in Russia, is really 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 played up. When they kind of traverse into this interdimensional area that's kind of like off the map of the known reality. It's not a different dimension, not a different universe, but just something that is wholly uncategorized. When they go to that place, um it's dark, and it's kind of like the middle of a black hole, but there's these things that are happening and these creatures that we see that are definitely bold and bright, and it just, the color makes everything pop off of the page. It was really exciting artwork, as always, as to be expected. I think that Sheedy is one of the best artists in Marvel's bullpen through and through, and they just keep delivering over and over and over. So again, as a standalone issue, I loved this. It was really fantastic. As a penultimate issue to this series, man, I don't know. I want to know more about where the heck we're going with this. But with that being said, maybe issue 8 pulls it all in and I go back and have to recant this entire thing and say, you know what? Hickman was right. We'll find out more though, but let me know. What did you think? Hey, speaking of Jonathan Hickman, we have Ultimate Spider-Man number 4, written by Jonathan Hickman, with artwork this time by David Messina. So we're used to seeing Marco Cacchetto on these books here, so it was kind of interesting that we already have a fill-in artist at issue number 4. But knowing the nature of Cacchetto and what he's done in previous books, it wasn't wholly surprising because it takes time to draw the quality of issue that he has been known to draw. Now, the nice thing about this, though, is that David Messina, I feel like he was up to the challenge. Some of the other books where we've seen fill-in artists for Cacchetto, I feel like they just threw another artist on without knowing the style that Cacchetto was bringing. Whereas in this one, I feel like they played to the strengths. So Messina's artwork definitely does not come with the same flair, I guess I'll say, that Cacchetto brings, but I feel like they were working from the same character guides, and he was working definitely within that same wheelhouse while also keeping his style in there. If I were to say anything, it was kind of like a marriage between Cacchetto and Terry Dodson. It kind of has those feels to it. Definitely thicker inks, darker darks. It wasn't so scratchy and crosshatchy as we've come to know Cacchetto for. But the character guides were definitely on point. You can see this is the 100% the same character that is coming through from issue 3 over to issue 4. The nature of this particular issue kind of was, you would think it would be boring, I guess you would say. It's a dinner date between superheroes. So Peter and Mary Jane meet up with Harry, and who is revealed for to be his wife as Gwen Stacy in this universe. And they're kind of discussing the nature of superheroics and what it means to have a family and what it means to put them in danger, and what it means to maybe be more truthful as opposed to keeping secrets. Whether or not it's more responsible to make sure that they're in the loop on everything as opposed to keeping them in the dark in a way to keep them safe. It was a really interesting way to go about that. All the while we see other conversations happening that are more business deals, revolving around the Osborns, who are still coming from money regardless of what universe you're in. But they have some opportunities that are going to come into play here that definitely directly involve Peter and his personal life, along with his uncle and J. Jonah Jameson. So I'm interested to see where those go. I thought it was, for a Talking Heads kind of issue, I still think that this was dynamic. And one of the things, again, where I feel like it wasn't Hickman's strength previously to draw or to write good, snappy dialogue. Man, I feel like he's done it, and he's done it issue after issue. And this one, I think, is an example, more so than any other issue, that he can take that and he can do it in a way that is captivating and compelling. And I'm just so glad that he's doing it. Like, this is telling me that Hickman has more to say than what we've already seen, which is, who would have thought that? I mean, the guy was spectacular to begin with. So with that being said, it was not an action-packed issue. It was not a surprising issue, but I guess maybe it somewhat was, with the way that we don't see Spider-Man, we don't see Green Goblin, but man, I was just enthused by it. So with that being said, Ultimate Spider-Man number 4. Did you pick it up, and what did you think? Okay, let's talk about some indie books here. We're going to start things off with Conan number 10, written by Jim Zub with artwork by Roberto De La Torre. This is just nostalgia fuel through and through. I love this book. I love this issue. So Conan remains in this mysterious past, and he's assisting Cull on a mission that leads them to visit Atlantis and investigate the Black Stone, the thing that's kind of fueled Conan's mission in the time before he jumped through to the past up until now. This just evokes so many emotions for me personally, and so many feelings. I grew up, my earliest memories of being in a comic book store revolve around me going to get the early issues of Wolverine's second solo ongoing series, which had John Buscema artwork. All the while, my father was sifting through magazine bins, picking out Savage Sword of Conan books, because that's the kind of thing that he really dug and really enjoyed as a child himself. And it just evokes all of those feelings every time I'm reading one of these issues. This one in particular, it just brings me back to childhood. It brings me back to the reason I love comic books. This was just an action packed issue as every issue of Conan has been. There's always just a fun scene where he's slashing his sword. They're taking a fight to, different sets of people, whether it be zombies, whether it be pirates. It's just always so fun, and there's always a reason behind it. It's just Conan doing Conan things. Um, it's just great. Delatorre, I hate to keep saying he's doing Buscema, because I think that's a disservice. He is definitely evoking those feelings, but it is an artistic style wholly his own as well. It just evokes those classic feelings, and I think it's the perfect artwork to be doing in a Conan style book. It's just and the other thing is Jim Zub is writing an immediately accessible story for new readers. Each issue can kind of be treated almost as a standalone. There's like a mini adventure in each issue, if not a huge style adventure that could take place. But you could jump in at any point, get yourself caught up very quickly, and understand where we're going. It's just the nature of a Conan story, and it's just awesome. So it's whether you're in the Hyborian Age or the Thurian Age, as we're seeing right now, I truly do think that this is a book for you. So, with that being said, let me know. Did you pick this up? Did you read it? And what were your thoughts? Okay, with another one of the Ram V books this week, let's talk about Dawn Runner number 2, written by Ram V with artwork by Evan Cagle. This was the issue I was waiting for. This is what we needed to see when issue 1 hit. Issue 1 laid a foundation, and it was interesting, but it wasn't wholly exciting. This issue brought the excitement 100%. The true nature of the latest Iron King has really kind of come into play. We understand what the makers of these Iron Kings needed to do. They understood that they're in order to level these things up to make them on par with the kaiju's that are attacking these cities. They needed a way to make them more powerful, faster. They needed to upgrade their OS, and in doing so, it's kind of done something that is questionable ethically, you could say. I wouldn't even maybe say questionable. I think it is, it's just ethically a poor decision. With that being said, continuing on those poor decisions here, you can see the employers that make these Iron Kings are looking to take our main character Anita, and they're putting her in a compromised position. They're looking to leverage some of the needs she has as a mother and for her family and use it against her, and she's definitely not having that. This was a compelling issue here. So what we see is the end beats of the first issue is that she's down for the count. We don't know how she's going to get out of this fight because she's kind of having these glitchy flashbacks of this other individual while she's in the Iron King. We see that she is able to snap herself out of it here, and when she does, the action set piece that takes place, the manner in which she takes out this kaiju is brutal, it's fierce, it's fast, and it was awesome. Cagle's artwork on this was second to none. It was excellent. It was the reason you can see that he is the right artist for this book. I would read a million issues of these robots fighting these monsters. If he's drawing it, I'm here for it. It is excellent. Ramvi's writing is so interesting too because it is so outside the wheelhouse of what we've all kind of come to know from a Ramvi book. There's usually heavy weights of emotion. There's usually this, I don't know, this sense, this weight of dread or of just like of guilt. There's usually some notion that our main character is dealing with that, like it's really an introspective kind of story, and this kind of delves way, way, way out of those maybe comfort zones of Rom, and it's refreshing. It's nice to see because this has all of the aspects that you would love from like a manga or an anime, built for a Western audience, and it's just so interesting. I love it. If you're gonna jump into this book and it's early on enough, I would say definitely read issues 1 and 2 paired together because it is a much more satisfying experience. I can't wait to see what happens with this. I'm really loving how they're building off of this, again, the OS of the Iron Kings. I really want to know how that's going to play into our main character Anita and how she's maybe going to help the mysterious things that are going on when she's kind of glitching out and when she's seeing these visions, because they definitely know The employer knows more than they're letting on, and I can't wait as a reader to find out those things that they know. So, Dawn Run number two, loved it, thought it was a great book. Next up with a new number one, we have Dick Tracy number one, written by Alex Segura and Michael Morisi, with artwork by Geraldo Borges. So, this is kind of a fun issue. I've never been a huge Dick Tracy fan myself. I can't even say that I even saw the movie that came out with Beatty back in the '90s. But I love crime, like comics and crime drama. Just anything crime, I'm here for. So I had to check this out. Also, with Michael Morisi being involved, I've yet to be disappointed by anything he's written. So when his name was attached, this jumped on the pull list right away. So the nature of the story is really it's pretty simplistic. We're at our jumping off point. Dick Tracy is investigating the murder of a city alderman and a newspaper reporter that happened in kind of a well-known cafe, a seedy underbelly where people go to make their background deals here without being seen, without anyone knowing the details. But in doing so, the place gets gunned down, and it's very easily identified by Dick Tracy that the alderman and the newspaper reporter were definitely the targets, even though it was an absolute bloodbath in there. This is definitely a grittier, bloodier take than I anticipated. When you think of Dick Tracy, personally, I think of the comic strips. I think of kind of an easier take, like, nah, see, for the bad guys, and, Dick Tracy doesn't need a gun to take the fight back to them. This isn't that guy. This is a seasoned veteran of war. This is a no nonsense kind of guy. He's hard nosed, hard boiled. So I think this is going to lead to a very interesting, very mature book that's not necessarily what a lot of people would normally associate with Dick Tracy. The story comes out of the gate swinging too. It's just, again, with that mature nature, they don't hold anything back. It's not overtly violent. It's not anything that is over the top. By no means is this a Garth Ennis book, but it's just definitely more than anticipated. Um, there's moments in here also where the artwork really shines. I think Geraldo brings a lot of like sketchiness and a lot of thick inks. It's almost like he's using almost like a chisel pen as opposed to a brush. There's like really fat lines that end abruptly, and there's a sketchy nature to it. And I think it's a really cool approach. Where I think his approach maybe fails the book a little bit is the use of digital halftone. A couple of things happen. I think it's maybe a larger scale halftone than was necessary on it, so it makes things look a little bit awkward where a shadow should be placed. It just kind of looks out of place and it looks a little bit jarring. I wasn't there for it. It clashes. There were also small color choices where the nature of the art style that's being used, when you toss like a realistic style of coloring on top of that, I feel like it's again jarring to the eye, where they're trying to make something that is so overtly comic booky and not necessarily cartoony but cartooned. When you start throwing on a color palette that is trying to make like realistic uh gradients of sunlight hitting someone, it just comes off a little bit jarring and a little bit unpleasing. Not It's not wholly bad, but I feel like maybe a different approach, a flatter approach, could do this book wonders. I think that there's a pulp version of this that could really look outstanding. In fact, if they did a black and white version, I think it might be more successful too. So if you're listening, Michael Morisi and Geraldo, let me know your thoughts on that. I'd like to see that. But Dick Tracy number one, I thought it was a satisfying introductory issue. It was surprising in a lot of ways, and I'm here for the ride. Next up, we have the final issue of If You Find This, I'm Already Dead. Number three, written by Matt Kint, with artwork by Dan McDade. This book, Robin learns the mysteries of her captor and the other Earthling that's on this mysterious dimension or world that she's been kind of stranded on. She kind of finds the inner workings of how this Earthling has survived there, what they've been doing, and how they've influenced all of the people that live within this weird dimension and the alien life forms. Um, this issue felt rushed, like a lot, like a lot. I know that this was, probably planned to be only three issues, but the way that issue two ended had me just like filled with hope. I felt like there was a lot of cool things and a lot of different parallels that could have been drawn. She had just met her captor, this other Earthling, on the final page of the last issue. And within the pages of this book, she's already identified he is the bad guy. They kind of did that James Bondy, here's my plan thing. And then within a matter of a couple pages, she's defeated him and she's returned to Earth. And we don't know any of the motivations of this person, this captor. We don't know any of the motivations of why he made the choices that he's made. We don't understand the impact that he's had on this world outside of a couple panels saying, yeah, here's what happened. It left us as a really unsatisfying ending. There were some really great story beats, artistic ways, or artist wise, where McDade was able to draw some really cool things. So the nature of what the captor was doing was kind of a building a false god for these new alien beings to worship. Where our main character Robin was able to evoke the true gods of this world, and they kind of do battle. So there was like some cool fight scenes and a lot of cool energy tactics that were used in the artistry, the action lines, the Kirby crackle, and all that kind of stuff. But overall, it was just a rushed issue. The main draw for you to pick up this is really to look at that artwork here. But overall, it kind of felt flat for me. I wasn't totally satisfied. But am I wrong? Did you pick this up? Did I miss anything? If so, let me know in the comments. Okay, next up on the list, we have Man's Best #2, written by Pornsak Pinchot, with artwork by Jesse Lonergan. So this is a really cool pickup on where we left off in the previous issue. Athos, Porthos, and Lovey, they're fighting their way through this army of clangers, which is their term for the robots, the clangers. And Athos is really trying to develop their leadership skills, especially when it's put right in their face that they're not living up to the expectation. It's kind of one thing to be titled a leader, and it's a totally different thing to actually lead. So they're navigating that difficult minefield, and it's hard being told that, and you can tell that they're really kind of playing with that notion with these pets. Um, Lonergan's artwork in this is just like again, it's fantastic. I love the way that they're using like the thick brush strokes and the line work on this. His coloring is next level as well. Like he really employs some cool approaches on here, especially when there's like electricity, when these clangers are attacking the dogs, and there's times when they can't get their shields up. They're using this really cool like CMYK like offset printing effects to portray the electricity as it crackles through these dogs as they're being attacked. The artwork just shines. It's great. There's a lot of cool action work that's done here, and I think that's really what's selling this book. The story itself, again, it's keeping it tight within the parameters of what the book was billed as, which was really like homeward bound in space. They're not driving too much outside of that safety net, but it's still satisfying. This book, it's leading them through this area where all the robots are. They finally are able to escape, and they find themselves on the surface of this planet, and they find themselves now going, basically out of the frying pan into the fire, because even though they're not fighting robots anymore, the the natural things that could be attacking them on this planet definitely start taking hold. There is a scene at the end of this issue where it is left on a cliffhanger, and it is something that is could be incredibly heartbreaking depending on how this all plays out. We're only at issue 2, but I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm not sure if this is a limited series or if they build this as an ongoing, but I'm interested. I want to see the homeward bound of all this play out here, especially not knowing if there is a home to even get back to. So with that being said, Man's Best was interesting, not necessarily the most satisfying, but it still got its hooks in me a little bit. So we're going to see where it goes. Let's talk about Pine and Marac #4, written by Kyle Starks with artwork by Fran Galan. So we've seen our main characters, Linnea and Parker, put in a really dicey position at the end of the previous issue. As we pick up with this issue, they're able to get out of the ritualistic cult's sacrifice, and they have to gather enough evidence to in order to convict them. They found the missing people, they've witnessed murder at this point now, but they need proof in order to convict them. And with the nature of this ritualistic cult being people of prominence within the town, people of power, that's going to be a difficult proposition. All the while, they flat out just need to survive because these cult members are going to be coming after them. So Fran Galan does a lot of fantastic things in this book, but I think the thing that shines the most is his characterization and the expressions that he shows on all of the characters involved. In particular, there is the army surplus store owner who is able to help our main characters as they're escaping, and he kind of helps them hide out. And some of the interactions that they have here, it's very humorous, but humorous in a chuckling out of nervousness way as opposed to chuckling out of like just this was so funny. And I think that's one of the strengths of Kyle Stark's scripting as well, is that he writes really witty, really funny dialogue, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a comedy book. I feel like it is taking the heavy tones that come along with the story that's being written here, and it's just interjecting little moments of relief, basically, where it won't hit you over the head with all of these heavy tones. It gives you these moments of levity, so where when a heavy moment does come back in, it impacts you even more. So there's only, I believe, one or two issues left on this, and we definitely see an end game being formulated on this. I've wholly enjoyed this series so far. I'm more curious though. Did you read Pine and Merrimack #4? And if so, let me know what you're thinking. Okay, let's jump into The Six Fingers #3, written by Dan Waters with artwork by Sumit Kumar. So Johans attempts to kind of speak with the man who's currently convicted as the one-hand killer, and we kind of witness exactly what happens when he blacks out and when he has one of his moments where he takes on the persona of this killer and navigates the city. It's a really interesting approach that they're taking on this. This is again the companion piece to the book The One Hand, written by Ram V, and we're seeing things through the eyes of the killer. And this issue in particular really gets to the point of how this is all happening, how he is making these murders without being caught, and some of the things that are happening. It's almost this kind of like matrixy approach. I feel like he's tapped into the source code of the world, and he's doing things that a normal human being shouldn't and would not be able to do. With this being a book in the future, maybe there's other things that are coming into play, but this definitely has been the most revealing issue that we've seen from either one of the two books. So this is probably Kumar's strongest issue artistic wise. He's delivering beautiful pacing. There's a lot of like frenetic action that takes place in this. But the most in the thing that really draws your eye in the most on this issue is really the scenes of just grotesque brutality. There's one scene in particular here that is just like gut wrenching, in the best way though. Like you should feel uncomfortable with the things that you're seeing, and I think that Kumar delivers on that notion, along with all of the other oddities that happen with the futuristic nature of this. He's kind of delivering on all levels. Dan Waters is also, he's doing a really masterful job on answering questions and delivering future questions as well that kind of keep you hooked and keep the story moving over and over and over. So this was a really great issue. I can't wait to see what Ram does on the next issue of The One Hand, because I absolutely do not know how they're going to build off of this, and that's a really exciting notion. We have another new issue #1 this week with Spectregraph, written by James Tynan IV with artwork by Christian Ward. So this was kind of an interesting issue. This was one of the short stories that we saw in the distillery one shot, The Devil's Cut, and it builds off of the story that they laid the foundation in. So there's a real estate agent, and she's kind of rushing to meet these potential buyers at this unique mansion in Southern California. And the nature of this clockwork mansion and its buyers kind of becomes clear as the issue kind of evolves and unfolds. And it's kind of playing with a couple different things. There's the occult nature of it, but there's also like the inner workings of this mansion. And again, it's kind of like a clockwork mansion. It's all run by, through keys, through spinning gears, and it's kind of an interesting look at what that's all about. We start to learn the background of the previous owners, but it's more interesting to find out that in this particular world, the occult almost doesn't exist. I feel like the people who were worshiping here and the people that were working towards this almost had to will the afterlife into existence, and I think that's an interesting notion. My fear is that Tynan's done this type of story before, and in fact, I've been burned on Tynan stories plenty of times in the past, so much so that I really did almost didn't pick this up. Now, I'm glad I did because this does have an interesting kickoff here. I'm excited to see what happens, but I'll be honest, if Tynan had paired with any other artist, I may not have looked at this because Christian Ward's approach has been really just stunning. It's something that you don't see from most other artists in this medium. There's a digital painterly quality that comes along with it, and it is just something that pops off of each and every page. There's some things that are really jarring in a good way, in an uncomfortable feeling way, that he presents here, especially with the color work. Um, uh, it's just that again, without Christian Ward, I feel like this is just like not Nice House on the Lake, it's Nice House on the Beach side or something like that. So I'm trepidatious, I'm a little bit leery, but I think that there's good things that could come down the pipeline here if we can kind of keep this condensed. If this is going to be truly a limited series, maybe kind of the way that Somna was with a 3-issue series, there could be some cool things that he does with this. I want to see Tynan in a limited scope. I don't want to see things get too stretched out to the point where what's happening, basically. So we'll find out where this goes. It's got my interest at least a little bit. We're gonna find out. But Spectregraph number one, let me know what you're thinking. All right, with this week's runner-up, let's talk Rare Flavors number 5, written by Ram V with artwork by Felipe Andrade. So Mohan in this issue has been captured. He's kind of he's in captivity here with the people that are actually been hunting Ruben this entire series, and throughout that captivity, we're kind of he's able to learn their background story. He's able to learn why it is that they're hunting Ruben, and kind of the familial interactions that Ruben's had with that family in the past, and the things that he has done. The thing that Ram V does so well in this story, and a lot of stories, is that every character is captivating. Even the people that have captured Mohan and that are going to attack Ruben, our two protagonists. They are just like so interesting, and their backstory plays out in a way where you can understand their motivations. You totally can buy into why it is that they're going after Ruben, and you can kind of get on their side. It's they're not villains necessarily. They're people that are going after him for a very specific reason, for a worthwhile reason. It just so happens to be we didn't kick the book off with them. They're not the main characters, but you can definitely sympathize and empathize with them and what they're doing. Andrade's artwork in here is sparse and sketchy, but it just works so well when we're with our characters and we're learning these backstories, and they're kind of stuck in their car together. You're working within these earthy tones, right? There's a lot of like, you know, light browns and yellows, interspersed with like the blue of the sky here. But even the blue of the sky is really kind of dulled down, so it's nice. He's working with certain kind of color palettes, but they juxtapose so well with especially the recipe in this issue and the recipe in all of the issues in this, where it almost kind of plays back and forth with these earthy tones from the story that's being told, and then the pastels of the recipe that we're seeing, that plays again so well within the character motivations. Specifically within this issue, we kind of see a recipe that was something that was brought to this landscape, and it's only accomplished by way of like taking bits and pieces from all these different places and pulling them together in this one. And we can kind of see Ruben's kind of gone through that same adventure himself. He's looked at different aspects of his existence, where he's kind of stopped pursuing the things that he's wanted. He's recently begun pursuing them again, looking at through the Anthony Bourdain lens of food and culture, and we can see this third change, as he met Mohan and was inspired to maybe change the ways, and change his approach on what he's been doing. So Ruben couldn't be the Ruben that we have without all these things coming together, just like the recipe could not be the same as if they didn't pull all of those things together that are bigger than the sum of their individual parts. It was a truly satisfying issue. It is something that's it just hits you emotionally every single time. There's always something that you pull away that you take from one of these issues here. This is no different than any one of those, and I'm extraordinarily excited to see how they finish this, because the film that this series had promised to come out, the thing that Ruben wanted to happen, it's done now. And now it's time to see exactly what's happening with that. Did he leave an impact on the world that was more positive than his previous incarnations? Well, I guess we got to see. I'm definitely going to be here for it, though. For that being said, that's exactly why this was the runner up, though. Absolutely fantastic issue, and I can't wait to hear what you think. And finally, with our top comic of the week, Rise of the Powers of 10, written by Kieran Gillen with artwork by R.B. Silva. Yeah, I know. I'm as surprised as you are. Who saw that one coming? So Xavier attempts to kind of enact his plan for a failsafe for mutant kind, while the Dominion of Enigma kind of reveals their own plans on how they're going to go about things. There's a lot of different factions that are coming into play here between mutant kind, robot kind, humankind, and also the Dominion. There's all these warring factions that are coming down into place here, and a lot of them, it's kind of like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and it's making for really satisfying things that are happening. This is, with the nature of this being the kind of conjoined series between the fall of the House of X and the rise of the Powers of 10, I feel like the titles are just so appropriate to what the stories are doing. And what I mean by that is the fall of the House of X trips over its own feet, whereas the rise of the powers is able to soar like a phoenix. Was that too heavy-handed? Probably. Anyway, it set the stage for this epic finale because we have the X-Men, who are completely unaware basically of Xavier's plans for mutant kind up until very recently. So it's not only do we have mutants versus robots versus humans versus Dominion, but we also have interfactions of the mutants working against one another, or maybe more specifically, the mutants versus Xavier. Xavier always seems to have a plan, and he always seems to try to put something forth here that he thinks is for the betterment of everyone, but no one else is on that same page. So is he truly right? Probably not, obviously not. But it's definitely led to this interesting notion. The other thing is that the ending of this issue spells something out that we did not see happening throughout the entirety of the Krakoan age. It's been building up towards this dominion. Hickman laid the seeds for that. What we're now learning is that maybe a dominion isn't necessarily one dominion. It isn't the sole entity or the sole group of entities together, but maybe there's more than one. And if there's more than one, I feel like there's maybe only one thing that can combat that, and they're kind of laying the stage for something like that to happen. Jean Grey is definitely going to be playing a prominent role in that, and you could probably tell where that's leading. So again, absolutely shocked. This was a really, really satisfying issue. I hope that they can land the plane because there's one issue left in this series here, but I'm so enthused to see Gillen do this type of work because it's been masterful. I think it's been up to the same level as Hickman in a lot of different ways, and this issue surprised the heck out of me. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and if you enjoyed part of this, be part of the panel, leave me a comment down below. Thanks again for watching, we'll talk to you later.